Okay, so maybe a place to start would be where I come from. You know, my grandfather, on my dad's side of the family, homesteaded in 1912, I believe. I came from North Dakota and homesteaded up north in the Genevieve area. And my grandmother also came from the North Dakota area. And then on my mom's side of the family, the Schultzes, my great-grandfather came from Minnesota in 1903. And when he came, he sold his farm in Minnesota for, I think, $4,000 or $5,000, which was a lot of money then. And he had all of his children, except the youngest, had been born. So he was later in life. And for some reason, he pulled up stakes, moved to the Milk River Valley here. People have often wondered why.
Yeah, if you already could afford a tractor, I mean, you must have been pretty good
Yeah,
for a farmer.
they loaded up all of their stuff on 2 immigrant cars. And the money they had was secreted away in the underwear of one of the daughters, who was probably, she was the oldest daughter, and she probably was, 18, 19, 20 years old. So they came with their children, pretty well grown, and their youngest, Gertie, was born here. But we've often wondered why. Beautiful farmland. That soil in Minnesota, where they came from, is very dark and rich.
A little different over here.
Get a little bit of rain, too.
Well, we've been getting a little bit of rain.
Yeah, we have.
A little too much.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I've come from. My grandfather Schultz, with 2 of his brothers, homesteaded out south then. They were old enough to be part of the homestead era too, and they had homesteads out south.
I think I remember Kelton pointing one of those out to me right before you kind of get to the Payne place out there.
Yeah, where Boucher, where Boucher's run some cows now. You've got the John Schultz place, which the house is still there, and it's one of those Sears Roebuck houses that they brought in. They could order the house, the materials were brought in, and then you could build it. And then just about a mile and a half, 2 miles down the road, my Uncle Beartrack Schultz homesteaded on one side of the road, and then my grandfather Lute Schultz homesteaded on the other side of the road. And where Bear's homestead was, there's not much there now. There might be just an old building that's starting to fall down. And my grandfather's homestead, about the only thing that's left is a bunkhouse. And there were quite a few buildings there, but the barn has fallen down, and the house there burnt up in the early 50s sometime. So that's no longer there.
Yeah, life in the South Bench seemed a lot harder than it was north of town, even though they're kind of similar.
Yeah. It was the people out there I would consider more poor. They were poor. And the whole time I was growing up, I always had this feeling from my mom that her life had been very poor, and she still carried that being poor with her, because it was very difficult. My grandfather Lute was a government trapper out there, and he trapped coyotes and was gone an awful lot of the time. And then my grandmother did the farm work. So my mom, being the oldest girl, did the housework. And she took care of her brothers and sisters quite a bit. So she always had duties to do.
So why do you think there was that kind of distinction between the North and South? Was the South kind of Was it just the country, or was it people coming later? Kind of the land was opened up later, maybe.
You know, that could be. When you go north, you can. There's some good cropland up there, good cropland, but out south you've got a lot of what we call badland, and so it took a lot more to earn a living there than up north, because a lot of badland. So I think that's what it was. I think it's just the way the land was. It was just harder to earn a living. And then, of course, homestead days, you could only have, 360 acres. And
yeah, that was later in the period, too. If you're one of the earlier ones.
Yeah.
Half or even a quarter of that.
Right. And the homestead time, when they set up that homestead law, it just like it is today, they don't come out and see what we're like here. And it's the little farms in the East Coast and in the South, 320 acres. That's a pretty good sized place. You can earn a lot.
Well, you don't need to irrigate.
Yeah. So that's a little political statement there.
Well, it is definitely a different country than a lot of people would expect.
It is. Even when I've been out with people from other parts of the country, they have a hard time picturing where I live. And I try to tell them how remote we are, how rural we are, and they kind of look at me like I may be hatched out from a frog somewhere. They have no concept of it.
Yeah, I'd never really realized it until I got older and was traveling as well, and it seems like this is almost kind of a time capsule because we're so rural. I mean, it seems like we're kind of 20 years behind most places.
Oh, we are.
And with technology, it's becoming less of a lag, but I think it was definitely the last 40 years, it was pretty obvious to a lot of people. You come up here and you guys are still using, you just look at the farm equipment.
Yeah.
I mean, most of our stuff is quite dated.
Right. And our way of life, often my doors are still unlocked, and leaving, I had a cousin come visit from Seattle, and she came for a Labor Day weekend because she wanted to see some of the family places. So on our first day, we went up north because she wanted to see the Snake Creek School. And we stopped in at Heidi and Mike's there. And they weren't home. Heidi and Mike weren't home. But, we stopped to see the horses, and I showed her the ranch, and I said, now before I continue, I want to run in the house and go to the bathroom. Helen had kind of a fit. She said, you mean the door is unlocked? I said, yeah, it is. Oh my goodness, why? I said, it's always unlocked.
The front door is unlocked. The keys are still in the ignition of the pickup. There might be a couple of guns sitting around.
Yeah. And see, that's the kind of lifestyle that people find hard to comprehend.
I kind of like it.
I kind of like it too. Yeah.
Because, I mean, a lot of people have a different viewpoint. It's usually no one's going to really want to come up here. There's not very many. We're pretty safe.
Yeah.
If they really want it, they're going to have it.
Yeah.
And if someone really needs it, I kind of like my neighbors to have that chance if they need
something.
If they need that vehicle, if they need that extra tank of gas to get back to town.
Yep.
We've had to do stuff like that before.
Yeah, really. You look out for your neighbor. And that, I think, is something that's slowly disappearing in this country. It's looking out for your neighbor. And that's kind of sad, I think. So.
Yeah, we could really get into politics now.
Yeah, we could.
That's all this year is. Let's steer away from
Yes, let's stay away from it.
So you've told me a little bit about your family as they're moving over here and your grandparents. What about your parents? When did they meet? Did they both go to school at Hinsdale High School?
My dad went to school here in Hinsdale. He they homesteaded way up north in the Genevieve country, But then my grandfather then bought the River Ranch out there where Dusty Jones lives. And that's where my grandfather lived. And so the kids went to school in town. My dad went to school as far as sophomore year. And he told me, I spent a lot of time visiting with my dad growing up. He told me, he says, well, it was the Depression, and he had to go to work and, and help the family out. But as I grew up and got older, I really think my dad quit school because he didn't like school. And having to go to work was just a good excuse. So he told me his first job was topping sugar beets for 10 cents a day, because we used to grow a lot of sugar beets around here. And it was very backbreaking work. So he worked odd jobs around here, and then in 1940 he joined the National Guard, Montana National Guard, and then was deployed. Of course, they went to basic training, and then he was deployed to Alaska, and I think it was 1941. My brothers would probably disagree with me, but that's all right. And he was in Alaska for a while, and then he spent the bulk of his service in World War II as a trainer, training troops at Fort Benning, Georgia. And then he got out of the Army in 1945. He told me he entered the Army a buck private and came out of the Army a buck private. So it took me a long time to figure out what that meant, but I finally did. Got in a little bit of trouble before he got out of the Army. And then my dad came back here, and then he loved Alaska. He fell in love with Alaska when he was there, and he went back up there and worked on some mining kind of things where they're doing some dredging. He had a trap line with sled dogs, and he told me some really interesting stories about those. And he came down to visit home and met my mom at the Hinsdale Rodeo. And they kind of hit it off. And then my dad went back to Alaska, and I'll talk about what my mom did there a little bit, and then I haven't figured out which aunt yet, but one of my aunts wrote my dad a letter and told him that he had some unfinished business to take care of. So he came back from Alaska, sold his stuff, and he and my mom got married.
She put it politely, huh?
Yes, put it politely. Of course, my Schultz uncles had other ways of telling me that story.
Oh, I'm sure.
And my mom was raised out south there, and of course, being the oldest child, she took care of the kids quite a bit. She graduated from high school in 1945, and she went to Havre for a year so that she could get a teaching certificate. At that time, that's all it took. Just take a year. And she came back and taught for a year at a country school out south. But then her mother contracted cancer, and then my mom quit teaching and stayed home and took care of her mother until she passed away. And then she and my dad got married. My mom did go to school, elementary school, country schools, but in high school, she went to high school here in Hinsdale, and they boarded out at the Chester Hotel.
Really?
During the week. And then on the weekends, her mom would come in and get them, and they'd go out to the ranch. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's too bad that building's gone. That would have
Oh, man.
There must have been quite a few stories through there.
Oh, yeah. I think a lot of stories in the Chester Hotel, really, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been quite a while since there's been a hotel here, I think.
Yeah, a long time. And then after my mom and dad got married, Dad worked on the ranch up north, and then when it was time for me to go to school, they moved to town and moved into that house that is behind the Rainbow Room that Hardmans are in right now. And Dad did some odd jobs. He and my grandpa engaged in farming and ranching, but they really were too much alike to get along real well, putting it nicely. And so there were times that he went off and did other things. He did some construction work with my Uncle Jim Schultz, and he also did some roughnecking on oil rigs over in Poplar and Chinook. And then when I was a junior in high school, Frank Powell offered him a job as a deputy at the Valley County Sheriff's Department. So my dad went to work for the county and worked as a deputy sheriff for several years, and then while he was working at that, he started brand inspecting, and he was a brand inspector for a very long time.
So he really was a jack of all trades.
He was a jack of all trades, yes, he was. His very favorite thing to do, though, his very, very, very favorite thing, was to fish, hunt, and trap. I spent many hours talking with my dad, watching him skin beaver. Beaver castor is one of my comfort smells.
How many people can say that anymore?
How many people can say that? And I know if I don't vote against that trapping thing, he's going to come back and haunt me.
Oh, yeah.
And then my mom was a stay-at-home mom. She just raised my 2 brothers and my 2 sisters and I. That was her job, and she did a really good job with that. And she liked to sew and cook and can and all that good stuff. So, yeah.
So would you rather be out with your dad skinning beavers or inside with your mom?
I'd rather be out, I think, with my dad skinning beaver. One of the last beavers my dad trapped was my dad had COPD, and one Sunday he came and knocked on my door, and he always called me Sis. He said, "Sis, would you like to go for a ride today? Check my beaver traps?" "Sure, Dad. Yeah, I'll go with you. Sure. Yeah, that'd be fun." So I got dressed and with all my winter gear on, and we went out to Rock Creek and looked at one of his traps that he had, and it was just a special time. He was just talking about all this stuff. And then there was a trap out on the Milk River, west of town here, and I can't remember exactly where the place was. And you know, he was just telling me about where everybody's stuff and all this good stuff. And the bank was about like this, down to the river. And we get down there, and my dad checks his trap. "Oh, by golly, I got a big one here." He starts pulling this beaver out. Humongous thing. You know, he had pulled it out of this hole. Humongous thing. And he gets it out, and he's huffing and puffing. He goes, "Oh, by golly, Sis, I think that's the biggest beaver I've ever pulled out of this river." I said, "Oh, gee, that's kind of cool, Dad." Then he says, "I'm not going to be able to get it up there to the pickup, though." So I had to pull that beaver up the bank. And I know for a fact that he'd been out there, saw that beaver, knew how big it was, and went looking for a sucker, and he found one.
Those are some pretty precious memories.
Yeah, they are.
He saw that beaver and he's thinking, "This is why I had kids."
Yep, that's right. Yeah, so, you know, memories like that were pretty precious.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I remember when you were teaching us in junior high, one of your favorite stories was actually about you in school and playing basketball.
Oh, my. I told you that story, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know, humor is always kind of interesting for me, and sometimes sarcastic humor is okay. So, girls' athletics in the state of Montana. There was a time when girls were very athletic. I mean, sports, they played, all this stuff. And then there came a time when we became very delicate. And we couldn't participate in sports a whole lot because we were delicate creatures. It would hurt us, that. There's the sarcasm there. And we had a PE teacher in high school, Reen Locke, and she saw the importance of girls participating in athletics. And there was a what they called GAA, Girls Athletic Association, in which you could participate in sports. It was not sanctioned by the Montana High School Association, though. Totally separate from school. So she encouraged us to do this, and she worked hard to develop a team, and we did develop a team. We had a girls' basketball team, and we could not interfere with the boys' practice schedules. Mm-hmm. So we had to come up with times when we could use the gym and they weren't there. So we got up 6 o'clock in the morning and went in for practice. And when it came time to name our team, we called ourselves the Sun-Ups. We were the Sun-Ups, and we played basketball very much differently than today because it was the half-court basketball.
Oh, really?
Yeah, half-court basketball.
Is that how it was for both, or was that the girls'
No, just
rules?
the girls. Remember, we were delicate.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're making headway.
I don't know, Michaela might be setting you back a little bit.
We went from sitting on the sidelines to, playing half-court. And we played teams like Poplar. Malta had a tough team. They've always had strong girls' teams. Saco came along a little bit later than we did. Glasgow had a team. And then in 1972, the Ridgeway Act opened up basketball for girls, and then they went to full court. Mm-hmm. So, and to me, it's been tremendous that has happened.
Now that wouldn't have been the current gym, would it? That would have been
no, that would have been an old gym.
Now, I've heard a couple different accounts. Was that gym kind of a sub-level?
Yeah, it was. It was. You went down into the gym. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that would have been the two-story brick schoolhouse, mm-hmm. and then they built the gym afterward. They did. Was it?
It was to the west. To the east. I'm sorry. To the east. Yeah, to the east.
Yeah, I just kind of wondering because heard a couple different accounts on that, and kind of where the school buildings were is kind of a cool little history. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Because what was it? The north wing of the school, the library and the shop and all that was an addition.
That was an addition,
school, wasn't
it?
Yeah. That they just kind of kept.
Yeah, I think that addition was constructed in the 50s. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was about 5-6 years ago we constructed the greenhouse back behind the shop there, mm-hmm. and I think we learned that they didn't really haul off the old school when they were done with it. They kind of just piled it and covered it, and we found that out when we poured the footing for the greenhouse. We ended up having to move the greenhouse over about 6 feet. We were still hitting it, but there was a big concrete foundation that we were hitting. We found all sorts of chunks of rebar and wood and all that. So. Yeah. So we know roughly where the school ended at the greenhouse.
Yeah, right about there. Yeah. My class, the class of 68, was the last class to graduate from the old school.
Oh, really?
So that's the distinction there. And then Jim's class of 69, was the first to graduate from the new school.
Well, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that is.
Hopefully we don't need any more new schools for quite a while.
Yeah.
I'm sure that new school was quite an accomplishment, even though I've heard a lot of people say they miss the old brick two-story school.
The brick two-story school had character, but it would be in dire straits today.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah. It was brick and had character and squeaky floors.
Yeah.
The stairs would squeak.
Now, had they already torn down the West End school by that point?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. I think your dad or Edry or someone talked about that in the book that I put together.
Yeah.
I think that might have been some of the wood that went towards the gym, because I know there
Could
were quite a
have
few
been.
buildings that they
Yeah.
simply said, let's just scrap this instead of buying lumber and built the gym out of it.
Yeah. That old gym was unique in itself.
Now, was that one of the gyms where there was about enough room for 3 people to stand on the sidelines and the out of bounds was the wall? Because I've heard of a lot of those in the old days.
Not much room between the out of bounds line and the wall.
So if I was standing against a wall, I'd still probably be in bounds.
You probably would. Yeah.
With my feet.
Yeah.
I remember we played up in Turner and I had that problem.
Oh.
They have one of the old gyms still. It's like they had an extra line in front. It was good.
Yeah, some of those old gyms. Wow. Imagine playing or even going to ball games in them.
Yeah.
They were unique.
So even back then, was basketball still kind of the community thing to go to?
Oh, basketball was the big thing. Yes, basketball was the big thing. Of course. Well, I remember when we still had a football team here, and I remember the year that the football team dissolved too. But basketball is always important. It's time to socialize and watch the game and cheer for the team and and all that stuff. Yeah. So.
Even if we don't get a root for the Raiders anymore.
Yeah. You all have Raiders. Yep.
I think everyone's pretty well transitioned and pretty happy with how things have gone so far.
And you have to look at the way things are today.
Mm-hmm.
You have to change with the times. Yeah. And sometimes change is difficult, but you have to look and say, okay, this is change, and we have to accept it.
Yeah. Yeah, I could imagine people 20, 30 years ago looking at the numbers slowly going down and saying, okay, we're going to have to co-op with SACO at some point. There's people saying that at some point we might have to join schools, but at that point it might not help because they'll just go to Glass Square Malta.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine anyone predicted that Whitewater would have been thrown in the mix there.
That was that was a bit of a surprise.
So, kind of speaking about these different towns, how have the other communities kind of in the area changed over your lifetime? I mean, Vandalia, was that still, did they still had a functioning school at that point?
Jim went to school in Vandalia.
Oh, really?
Yeah. A country school. And I'm trying to remember what year it closed, and I can't. Back when I was growing up, transportation has changed so much. Families had just one vehicle. Everybody didn't have their own car. You pretty much stayed home. So I didn't go to Vandalia. Went to Glasgow maybe once a month. If you were lucky, if that. Or maybe even 2 months, because we had a grocery store here. So why go to Glasgow? And as far as going to like Saco and Whitewater and Dodson, well, the one time you went was on a pet bus. So you didn't have that connection that the kids today have with other students. Yeah. So that I think in itself is good. You're not so isolated, I'm not going to say isolated. I'm going to take that back. You're not so cocooned. I think that's better, because I don't think we're isolated, but we're cocooned.
So is that kind of, were the rivalries between towns bigger back then because of that?
Oh yeah. You've heard the stories about changing the H to the S and the S to the H's. There's been a few stories about that. That was always something. Yeah. Big rivalry. And one of my favorite basketball stories was at a Saturday morning game between Hinsdale and Saco in the Malta gym, I believe, or maybe it was I think it was in the Chinook gym. Big game. I mean, it was Hinsdale
and those
Saco.
Saturday morning games are almost always a loser out, winner gets
loser
to go
out.
on.
Yeah, loser out. Hinsdale won the game by 2 points that morning. And there was one point in the game in which Gary Taylor was the last one to touch a ball that went into Hinsdale's basket and was counted as a basket. So that was always kind of fun. We really enjoyed that. We were so glad he won the game for us.
Well, I'm glad you can laugh about it now. Back then, that was probably a sore spot for a lot of Saco people.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I remember Kelton talked a little bit about how basketball was different. Mm-hmm. He said it was a lot rougher. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember what game it was or anything, but he's telling me a story about how the coach always had to pull him pretty frequently to keep him from fouling out. Mm-hmm. And I guess one day the coach got tired of it and said, "Okay, Kelton, you're on your own. I'm not pulling you. Once you foul out, you're out." Kelton said it was about the fastest 2 minutes of a game he's ever had.
And he was out, yeah. My brother Carl played basketball, and there was a kid from Saco. I can't remember what this kid's name was now. But the whole game, this kid, I mean, he was on Carl. He was, just doing all sorts of stuff, and was not getting called for the fouls and holding and just everything. And Carl finally found his chance, though. This guy took off on a fast break for this basket, and the only one who was closest to this player was Carl. Carl ran as fast as he could, caught up to the kid, and then just pushed him into the wall. Of course, Carl was ejected from the game, but he felt better.
Got his revenge.
Yeah, got his revenge. Yes. But those games when you've got an opponent that's just elbowing and just everything. It just you get to the point where you just got to do something. So that's what Carl did.
So how did things change when you went from being in school to being in school at the other end of the classroom?
I didn't go right from college to teaching here. I had a span of time. There's about a period of about 10 years when we weren't here. When I graduated from Bozeman in 1972, I went to work in Opine and taught 6th grade there for 2 years. And then Jim and I got married, and we spent the next 4 years on the East Coast. And then when I came back, I taught in Saco for a while. And then we bought the house here, and then I started teaching. So there'd been a span of time so that I came in as, not as Doris Nelson, but Mrs. Thompson.
So you're not teaching the same kids that you were going to school with?
Yeah, no, I wasn't. It was. Some of the same teachers were still here, but so that made a difference.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting looking at the teaching staff now, because I remember growing up, we had a pretty solid set of teachers that had been there for quite a while. Mm-hmm. I mean, you and Connie and Mrs. Mavenkamp.
Yeah.
I think Patty's the senior teacher now.
Yeah.
Other than Carol and Donna, I guess.
Yeah,
with
yeah.
The resource
Heidi. Yeah. My daughter Heidi, senior teacher. That seems impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a change when you're looking at that and thinking all these teachers that growing up are just set in stone. These are the teachers.
This is who you're going to get.
Gone. I mean, Judy Jones, that was something my parents always were kind of happy about, being able to have a music teacher.
Right.
Be able to teach 12 years for a kid.
Right.
That
was
pretty big for us.
Yeah, and there are changes. Yeah. Just changes like there always is. And they're your baby boomers retiring, and then there are not enough teachers to replace those baby boomers, and of course the teaching salary is very poor in Montana. Yeah. So you have many different factors there.
Yeah, and because of that, not only in Hinsdale but across the state, there's been quite a movement towards classes online. What's kind of your opinion on that?
I think if you have a very self-motivated student, that student will do well. I still think there needs to be some interaction. If you have a mentor that's helping you through that program, or someone with whom you can discuss things, because I think you need to bounce ideas and stuff off of people. I know both Heidi and Becky are taking online courses now, and it's some of the way they respond. I mean, Becky this summer had to respond with tweets, with what, 120 characters? Oh, man, how do you respond to a deep educational question with 120 characters and stuff like that?
At the same time, that's got to be a great resource for teachers, with that being a requirement to take classes.
Without having to leave home and spend your summers or a year on campus somewhere. That is a great resource.
Yeah.
That really is. Yeah, it saves money.
So with all of your years of teaching in Hinsdale, you must have had a few good stories, especially with some of the outstanding students you've had. I'm just thinking of some of the nephews you've had.
Some of the nephews I've had. Yeah, interesting stories. I guess one of my stories that stands out was being on duty, and my son was out on duty. He was about 5th or 6th grade, and I heard the F word, and I became a little angry, and I pulled him into the office, and Mr. Denny was superintendent. I said, "You're going to have to do something with him, because if you don't, I'm going to kill him." And Adam maintained that he never did say the F word, but someone out there did. He had kind of an interesting class. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I remember with our class, we were one of the first years that we had the smart boards.
Oh, yeah.
We had a little bit of fun in your class from time to time. What was it? Was it an April Fool's Day when they covered the projector, took out the batteries, moved a bunch of stuff around?
Yeah. Covered the lens on the projector. I could never figure that one out. It took me a while, and Jim was in on that.
Why won't it turn on? The board's on.
Yeah, God, I don't know. I can't figure this out.
I think one of my favorites was the fact that if you touch the board, it moved the cursor on the computer.
Uh-huh.
And so I remember I think it was the last year that we had you when we were in junior high. And I think we were at the end of class, and you were trying to shut the computer down. So you were trying to go over to the left bottom corner to go to the start task button. And I was just kind of out of your field of view on the smart board. You get about an inch from the start button, I just kind of tap the board. They go way up in the other corner, you're like, huh. And you'd scroll down, and I'd tap the board. I think you were just about to call Jim to come get you a new computer.
Well, I always joked with kids, and I said, always told them, if you tie my hands, I won't be able to talk.
I remember that several times.
If you just do that, I won't be able to talk, and then
We really considered it.
The only one whom I thought could do it was you. Because you were big enough,
Yeah.
You could just go, okay.
Well, you get to see me and Michael getting together.
Oh, man.
What was it, our last day of school, or my senior year? I think it was your last day, too.
Yes.
We had squirt guns for some reason.
Yes, and you squirted me.
I can't remember. Was I the one that had to get you out of the room somehow?
Yes, you did.
I don't remember what I said.
I don't remember either, but you got me out.
The girls were pretty happy.
Yeah, they were. That
was a fun day.
And it's fun. You got to have fun.
Well, we figured between Claire and Austin, either you would blame him or you'd be okay with it because she was there. I don't think he was even in on it.
No, probably not. It's like, what? Sometimes Austin was that way.
Oh, I remember he would always get so mad because he was kind of like your Adam story. He didn't say anything that bad, but he'd say a little cuss word here and there, and you'd catch him as soon as you could, just hear it in his voice. And I was always kind of the goody two-shoes growing up, especially in school.
Mm-hmm.
But I was starting to get to the point where I just kind of naturally used some of the lower cuss words.
Mm.
And Austin would get so mad because you would catch him. And I would say it all the time. And he's like, you didn't hear that. He just said it. And you're like, Brady wouldn't say that. He just did. I heard him.
Well, you know, one of my funniest stories about using swear words in school. I was teaching 1st and 2nd grade. And Paige Powell was working on a math problem. And they were doing subtraction. And I had taught a lesson on how to take away. And then I sent them to do their homework. And Paige did it, and she'd come up, and I looked at this one problem. She had a really weird answer, and I'd raise it, and I'd go through the whole step again, how you take away. I said, okay, now go do it now. And she came back a second time. Completely different answer. And I raised it again, and went through the whole process again, sent it back to her. She comes up a third time with a totally different answer from the other 2 times. I said, what the hell are you doing? And it just came out. I'm like, oh, I can't believe that. So I raised it a third time, went through the whole procedure, sent it back. 4th time she came back with the right answer.
Motivation.
Must have been. Oh dear. Yeah. Fun.
So, you retired, and now you're just a grandparent.
Grandparent?
Best job in the world, right?
Yep. Yeah. But I also am pastoring, so
Yeah.
that's something I did not expect to happen.
Yeah, we're pretty thankful to have it too.
And you know, it's the way God works. God knew I couldn't just retire and put my feet up and sit around and watch the world go by. And he said, you need to do something.
And grandchildren and bird watching isn't enough.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been a blessing. It really has. So.
Yeah, how has the church changed over the years?
Oh, well, it's changed physically because, you know, we added that part on.
You remember a lot of people were pretty sad about the fact they had to cut down that tree because that was probably one of the biggest pine trees in town, and
it was a beautiful pine tree.
That's a hard thing to grow in this country.
Yeah, and it was a beautiful pine tree, but you know, it was creating some of the problem. And I remember sitting in church after services one Sunday, and your grandma. You know, there's Edie. She's one of the matriarchs. That would be the way to describe her. She was a matriarch, and we started talking about what we had to do, and do we want to just replace the wall, or do we want to go out and expand our area here? If we expand our area, we've got to cut that pine tree down. And Edie goes, well, if the tree's got to be cut down, I guess it's got to be cut down. And it was just like she had given the okay. And it's like, okay.
That's what everyone was waiting on, I guess.
Yeah, just to see what we were waiting for her okay, her approval. Yes. So I often think about that. I often do. Yeah. And Mike McCauley was the one who made the first cut.
It's a very nice addition. It really changed not only the way the church looked, but its function as well.
Yes.
I think it made our church much more functional.
Oh, yes, it is. Our first Lutefisk dinner after we got completed, someone came downstairs and went, oh boy, this no longer is a dungeon, is it?
Yeah, you no longer have the 20 people waiting upstairs for food.
Yeah. There's more movement, and the church is used quite a bit, so that's good.
I always think that's one of the strangest things, that we would have a line and a waiting list for a lutefisk feed. But it's just one of those things about that culture up in this northeast corner of the state.
Yes.
It seems that there's a group of them that'll go to every one of them.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Your fish eaters. Yeah, they will go.
Oh yeah, and I remember talking with my cousins and uncles in Norway when I was over there this spring,
Mm-hmm.
and they're very confused as to why we're still eating lutefisk.
We sent you to America and you're still eating lutefisk?
You have to keep something of home.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. Oh, yeah.
So lutefisk is kind of one of the big traditions of Norwegian culture. What kind of family traditions did you have? What did you guys do for the holidays, Christmas, Thanksgiving?
My grandma and grandpa had a wedding anniversary and a birthday. My grandpa's birthday was the week of Christmas. One was the 21st and one was the 23rd. Then you had Christmas Eve. So we always gathered out there on one of those days and had Tom and Jerry's and played with cousins and visited and always had something to eat. And my grandpa played the violin, so often there was music.
That would be pretty cool.
Violin, and my Uncle Ed Laycock played the mandolin, I believe. And A.J. Hens would come over and he played, I can't remember what he played right now, but and they'd sit there and they'd play those old songs, and it was special, yeah. And little kids would dance.
You don't have very many people just gathering and having those old-time bands anymore.
Well, yeah. It was just like, oh, well, we brought our instrument. Well, maybe we better play.
Because you just carry it around with you.
Yeah, you just carry it around and sit and, okay, we'll play. And you don't see that anymore. Yeah. You don't see that at all.
Well, that was pretty valuable back then. You didn't have, radio wasn't as easily accessible. TV was just kind of getting going, really. And
yeah.
You didn't have an iPod with 3G, 4G internet access anywhere to the world's library of music.
Yeah, really. Live music and, of course, TV, yeah. You didn't have, well, you had more as well, but it was black and white and it was fuzzy. You couldn't see a whole lot.
Speaking of TV, that's one thing I've heard of, but my generation has never seen the fact that the TV stations went off air at night.
Oh, yeah.
And that... They played the national anthem?
They played the national anthem at the end of the broadcast day, and then the broadcast was just fuzzy. And then in the morning before they broadcast, they had what they call test pattern on there.
I do remember that when I was really little.
Oh yeah.
When we still had the antenna TV.
Yeah, sit there and watch the test pattern, wait for the cartoons to come on. Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that doesn't even exist anymore, no. Saturday morning cartoons. I think it was about 4 years ago the last network stopped doing it because you have entire networks for it.
Yeah.
But I think that really takes away from something special. Not that you really need to be watching TV all the time, but that was the kids' TV time.
Yep.
There was nothing else to watch.
Yeah, no,
unless you like crime drama.
Yeah. This communication and media has changed dramatically in my lifetime. Dramatically. It really has.
Yeah, I think one of my earliest memories actually is in Grandma and Grandpa's house before it burned down, and that they had the old rotary phone.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. You still find a couple of them here and there. I think Grandpa has one in the basement because it's a landline that doesn't require power, so even when the power line's out, you can use it. Yeah. Which is one of those things that most kids my age will never know. Most kids younger than me will never even know what a landline is, probably.
Yeah, because you don't have landlines. Yeah. There was over in Seiko after confirmation, one of the kids wanted to use the phone. And they have a Princess dial phone. Kid didn't know what to do. Here, give me your number, I'll dial it. Changes. Change is inevitable.
So, in your opinion, what would be the top 1, 2, 3 big events in Hinsdale?
Yeah, just in Hinsdale or things that affected Hinsdale?
Whatever you think really defined the big moments. Asking too hard questions.
Boy, I gotta think. Okay. I think World War II impacted this community quite a bit because so many young men went off to war. And rationing, rationing of gasoline, food, something we know nothing about. So I think that was a big impact.
Yeah, I remember during Memorial Day services when Doodad gets up in front with Sherman and they sit and read that list, and it's a long list.
This community has supported our military quite well. Yeah. So I would say that's a big impact. Of course, you get into the whole history of the community. And I think in my generation, I think as far as on the world stage, I think the assassination of JFK impacted my generation quite a bit. That and the Vietnam War impacted my generation quite a bit. So, even though those happened outside our community, it still impacts us.
I think I found one of the questions I need to ask everyone.
Oh,
because it really makes people think, and I think it's really going to kind of give everyone a good view of those really important things that really kind of stick with people.
Yeah, because everybody has a reaction to those. My mom and dad's reaction to World War II. Okay. My generation's reaction to the assassination of Kennedy in the Vietnam War. Okay. And your generation, September 11th.
Yeah, I think I'm one of the youngest kids that would actually remember that, because I was first grade, I believe. I remember we went into the kindergarten room and they wheeled in the big tube TV. And there were two of them in the school, and usually that was the best thing when they would wheel it in, because it meant you got to watch a movie,
and then
that's not what happened that day.
Yeah.
I think it's taken a lot of years for that to really sink in. Partly because, at least in my experience, I didn't have a grasp necessarily of the world at that time.
Right.
So you might hear about World War II and all this and that, and you hear of attacks, but it doesn't really sink into what that means. So I didn't really realize that at the time, I guess, that was a very unique event, that it wasn't something that just, it's bad.
Yeah,
it was that it was very, very unique in all of the U.S.'s history.
Yeah.
I mean, the only other really big attack that we can compare it to is Pearl Harbor.
Pearl Harbor, yeah. I
mean, there's been a lot of other battles and attacks, but something of that magnitude and that suddenness.
Suddenness and surprise.
And civilian loss.
Yeah.
So. And then both of those events are still shaping our country and the world.
They are. So you have to know your history.
Yeah.
You have to know your history. You really do. Because your history tells you who you are and where you've come from. Yeah, so. But I've always thought history was interesting. I've always enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I'm one of the rare few of my generation that really looks at that.
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying that kids aren't interested in history, but I think I've taken a much bigger interest in it than most people.
Deeper interest,
I think that'll change as my generation ages. I think that's kind of a natural thing.
Right, because like when you're 18 or so, 16, 17, 18, with my generation, stories of World War II, oh, God, roll your eyes, and oh, man, do we have to listen to this again, and
And my generation won't hear very many first-hand experiences at all.
Yeah. But now it's like, I wish I'd listened a little bit more.
And thus the camera.
Yes, because the stories, both my uncles, Jim and Roy Schultz, were in in World War II. Jim was very seriously injured, wounded, very, very seriously wounded. But they never talked about what they did. My dad always felt like, he was training soldiers at Fort Benning, not in the battlefield. But they didn't talk about it. My Uncle Roy didn't start talking about what he did in World War II until a year or two before he died. He was a radio man, communications. And he was in the Battle of the Bulge. Stuff like that, and you're going, oh my goodness, that is totally amazing. Why didn't you tell us that? But they didn't talk about it.
It's a very stoked generation.
Yeah. They kept it to themselves. And my dad, I'd say, well, Dad, what'd you do in the war? Because he was in Alaska, and there was the Battle of Attu in Alaska, which is in the Aleutian Islands. And he gave me a book on that war, that battle one time. It's a paperback book, and the print is really tiny. He says, if you want to know what happened, read this. It's the truth. I said, okay, Dad. I never read it because, oh. But, I asked him, well, December 7th, when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor, what did you do? I mean, how did you feel? What happened? Da-da-da-da. Well, all the lights were out, lights out, and I couldn't have any light. He said, I went over to the PX, stole a case of beer, and we sat around the barracks and drank beer. Okay, Dad.
Sometimes you just gotta keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah. But he was involved in the Battle of Attu, but never, ever said anything except it was a big mistake. That's all I ever said. So. But, yeah. They just didn't talk about it. So.
It's box elder bug season flying around.
Yes. I tried to drown 2 of them down the sink the other day. I thought I had enough water down there, but no, they came crawling right back up.
Well, I've been asking you a lot of questions. Is there anything that we've skipped over?
When you start when you've lived as long as I have, I hate to admit it, I'm an elder person now, AARP, yep. And when you take the time to think back over your life and over the events that have shaped you and shaped your community, it can be kind of daunting at times when you think about that. Think about all the different things.
Well, I can only imagine. I look back on my short 23 years. And
yeah.
Can't imagine.
Yeah. You just think about the different things, and it's amazing, and it really is. Yeah. So try to think of something we haven't talked about. Oh, I'll probably think of it after you leave.
This is up to you, but if it's something that you would like to have on record and all that, was there anything you'd like to say about Adam or about that, or? We don't have to.
Yeah. He was a good soldier. He was very proud of serving his country. And his grandpa, Tom, was very proud of him because Adam went into the National Guard when he was 17, between his junior and senior year of high school. And I remember he came home, and I was standing at the sink there, and he goes, Mom, I made a decision. Okay, Adam, what did you decide? I made a decision, and you're not going to change my mind. Okay, yeah, what have you decided? I've decided to join the National Guard. I said, well, Adam, I'm not going to change your mind. But the worst part of that whole part was when the recruiter came to my house. And since Adam was not 18, his dad and I had to sign for him. And that man read to me what I was signing. I said, I can read this myself. He says, no, ma'am, I have to read it to you.
in my job description.
Yes, I was like, oh, gee. I rolled my eyes then.
I'm a teacher, I can read.
Yes, I'm a teacher, I can read. But, you know, when he was deployed to Alaska, and to, I can't remember, Fort Richardson up there. And they were working as military police because the guard unit in Malta that he joined had been an artillery unit. But then, like after 9/11, they transitioned to military police. So they deployed to Fort Richardson in Alaska while the military police there went to Iran, Iraq, to the Middle East. And then while he was there, he did some special training in Hawaii for kind of like a SWAT team kind of thing. And he was over there on the 4th of July. And he called right after fireworks on the 4th. And I go, oh, Adam, oh, you're in Hawaii now? Mom, put Dad on the phone. I'm going, oh, gee, okay. And so I gave it to Jim. Adam was standing outside an aircraft carrier. It was the first one he had seen, because Jim had been stationed on an aircraft carrier when he was in the Navy. And he had to tell his dad about seeing this aircraft carrier. So that was pretty cool.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. So that was cool. That really was.
And the fact that he was also stationed in Alaska, that's...
So that, you know, see that, you get those ties. You get those ties, yeah.
It must have been pretty special for all of them.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool. That was pretty cool. So that was neat that he was there. So he really enjoyed that. So, and then he was also the first one in our family to see a squirrel in this part of the woods.
I've heard stories of the squirrel migration, and we're starting to notice it. We had one at our house.
Well, he was hunting out at Kay's when he was probably a senior in high school. I think he was a senior. He graduated in 1999. And he came home. And he goes, guess what I saw, Mom? Oh, what'd you see? He said, I saw a squirrel. Yeah, right, sure, Adam. I didn't believe him at all. And then a couple years later, when I'm cussing the squirrels, chasing them, trying to shoot them with the BB gun, and he happened to be home, and he goes, you believe me now, don't you, Mom? I said, yeah, I do.
They probably mess up your bird watching a little bit.
Oh, they do. Oh, they're nasty things.
Who was I thought someone was telling me their theory on how the squirrels got here. I think they said years ago that they had released them into the Fort Peck area and that they've just kind of been moving up the river.
Well, you know, Lewis and Clark talk about seeing squirrels. And I don't know if they're the Richardson's ground squirrels or if they're I think these are red squirrels we have here. I'm not real sure about that. And I've never looked into it. But, you know, that'd be something you could probably look at. But growing up, never saw a squirrel. Never, ever saw a squirrel.
Yeah, they seem to be kind of a new addition to at least this area.
Yeah.
Maybe Western Montana's had them for a long time. But
Western Montana's had them. But it seems like they're coming east and south.
Yeah. And it's so strange that after all this time that they're just now moving into the area, because I think they're still a U.S. native species. I don't think
yeah. They're a native species.
And so it's just very strange that all of a sudden they're coming into this area. Maybe it's people. Maybe there's more food. I don't know.
Or something. I have a pastor friend I've gotten to know who lives in Indiana, and a couple weeks ago he posted on Facebook, oh, good day of squirrel hunting, went out and got 2 squirrels. And I posted, I said, anytime you want to hunt squirrels, you come hunt my backyard anytime, because I have lots of them. You know, so yeah, I it'd be interesting to know. But they're one of those things that people don't spend a whole lot of time studying.
Yeah.
You know, you study the elk, you study the buffalo, you study deer, antelope, but some of the smaller mammals you don't.
But that's one amazing thing about Montana, and I thought a really cool fact, because if you know me, I'm full of random facts.
Yes, you are.
Most useless. But Montana actually has the most mammal species of any state.
Oh, really?
And it's a large part because of those small animals, the fact we have the western and the plains.
We have the east and the west, yeah.
I mean, we have all the bat species,
Yep.
the rodent species,
Yep.
there's very many, and
Yeah.
it's just very interesting that,
it is.
yeah, we're a big state, but we're pretty dry. We're not super productive like the East Coast. And
Yeah.
pretty diverse.
Right. We are. So we're fortunate that way. We really are.
Yeah, so everyone that knows you knows that you love to watch birds. Is there any special sightings you ever had? Anything that...
I had a western tanager here one day, and it landed on my deck out there, and my niece Erin was here, and she was sitting with her face facing south, and I go, "Oh, Erin, there's a western tanager," and I took her head and I turned it like that so she can see it. I see ya, Doris. I see ya, Doris.
Was she excited, or did she think you were crazy?
I think they all think I'm crazy. All of them do.
But they all love you.
Oh yeah, they do. Yeah, and I can attribute that to my dad, because he always liked to look at things, and I got in the habit of looking at things. And one time there were a bunch of northern flickers out here, and it was fall, rainy, cold. And I go, what kind of birds are those? Oh my goodness. Got a bird book. I've been hooked ever since. So.
Yeah, one of the strangest birds I think I've ever seen around here is the black-headed seagull.
Oh, the Franklin's gull.
Yeah, and at least from what I've noticed, they always come up on years where we're having lots of extra moisture.
That's what my dad said. He said, if you ever see those, and he called them black-headed seagulls, you're going to have rain.
Yep, and I've seen them, with the last 5 years, we've had 3 years with lots of rain. I've seen only those 3 years.
Yeah.
I saw them this spring, and I was waiting for it.
Yeah.
It was a lot longer till it rained than I thought it was.
Yeah.
But at least from what I understand, it seems like it's always when we pull that moisture up from the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah.
And they just ride the winds.
Yeah, I'm not real sure about that. I think they probably nest at Bedoin.
Really?
Yeah, I think they do. So, but it just, one of those things you make a connection with. A lot of moisture.
The old folk tales.
The old folk tales, yeah. And sometimes there's some truth to that. Yeah, one time we had 3 sprinkles on the sidewalk, and I wrote my dad a note and left it for him. Saw black-headed seagulls, we got moisture on the sidewalk.
That counts, right?
Yeah. He said, yeah.
Whatever goes to keep it alive.
Yeah.
So, speaking of weather, we have, isn't it the jet stream that goes basically right above us, and I think that affects our weather a lot. If looking back at old records, it seems like we kind of go in a cycle, and I haven't quite pinpointed it, but it seems like kind of almost roughly 10 years dry, roughly 10 years wet. Have you kind of noticed that over your...
I don't know how, the time span, but during Homestead time it was wet. When my grandfather Nelson came here in 1912, grass was as high as a cow's belly, hid all the rocks.
So no one knew what was actually
there.
there.
No one knew the rocks.
I'll take this one.
That one looks good. A lot of grass. And then after about 1920, that's when the migration began, the homesteaders moving out, because it was dry.
Yeah, and I've heard in the history books that Montana was the only state to lose population during the Roaring 20s, because we were already in the Dust Bowl, basically.
Yeah, it was dry, drought, and people were leaving. And then you had the 30s that were dry also. And, and as far as the 40s, I don't know. 50s, we had snow. I remember snow growing up as a kid in the 50s and the 60s. But the 80s, the 80s were very, very, very dry.
Yeah, I've heard my mom talk about that a lot, and the story that I remember, probably doesn't tell it that often, but I tell it all the time, is that she was used to there being zero moisture, zero rain, and Grandpa Mick told her one day that they were in a drought. She was excited because it meant it wasn't normal and one day it was going to rain.
Well, my kids growing up, they didn't know what rain was. And if we should get a stray thunder shower, oh my God, it scared them. It scared them because they didn't know what thunder was.
Thunderstorms were always my favorite.
Yeah.
Go sit on the porch and just watch it kind of come in, and you can just feel the air cool down.
Right, yeah. They didn't know that. I remember one year, it was in the fall. Was it in the fall? Maybe early fall, maybe November. We got a skiff of snow. We got about just a skiff of snow during the night. And I'd gone out for my walk, and I saw the snow, and I came back in early, and I got Adam up, and I said, Adam, it snowed last night. And I knew the wind was going to start blowing. I said, if you want to play in the snow, get up and play in the snow. He got up, got his stuff on, went out and played in the snow, and then a couple hours later it was all blown away because the wind had come up. But you know, little things like that. We didn't have snow either. Mm-hmm. Yeah, cold, but no snow.
Yeah. The weather here is always interesting because I remember brown Christmases and white Halloweens.
Yeah.
I think one time it was the same year.
It could be. Yeah. I have seen snow every month of the year. There was one July that was kind of cold, and I was out on the 4th. I was out for a walk, and there were just a couple of those little snowflakes that soon disappear. But I went, oh, those are snowflakes. Oh yeah, and it's July. But yeah, I've seen snow, good snow in August. I've seen good snow in June. And it's Montana. You just say it's Montana.
It's like we're in the mountains, but we're not.
Yeah. It's Montana. Don't like the weather? Wait 5 minutes, it'll change.
What's one of the other sayings? Montana, one of the only places in the world where you can get frostbite and sunburnt on the same day.
On the same day, yep. Use your heater and your air conditioner in your car on the same day.
It's within the same hour.
Yeah. That's Montana. In 1984, Becky was born in 1984. The river had dried up. Have you ever heard that?
I've heard tales that it used to do that before they put the dam in, but I didn't realize it did.
In 1984, it dried up. It was, that's the 80s, dry. We are, as far as our water was concerned, you had an option of watering your lawn or your garden, but not both. And I chose to water my garden. And the grass was just as brown as anything when Becky was born. And the river was dried up. Yeah. So it's like, ooh.
Yeah, I remember hearing that the river used to dry up almost every year before they put in the dams. Mm-hmm. I thought I'd seen a picture. I might be mistaken, but I thought I'd seen a picture of them having horse race on the 4th of July in the riverbed.
Oh.
And I can't remember if that's a figment of my imagination or not, but if it's true, I want to find that picture.
Yeah. Well, 84 it was dry, but there was still mud.
And actually, speaking of pictures, that reminds me, in that newspaper that Bob and Edry put together, it's in my book somewhere. They don't know where it was, but there's a couple pictures with a cottonwood tree that had two trunks.
Oh, yeah.
That had somehow gotten bent over and rooted itself on the other side and made an arch.
I always thought that was out in near Rock Creek somewhere. But I don't know why I thought that.
Yeah, and I think I've heard other people say that too, but we'll probably just never know, I guess.
Yeah. Because we used to take school picnics out at Rock Creek, and the last day of school we'd go up to Rock Creek and have our picnic up there.
Yeah, Rock Creek is one of those areas that's kind of one of the hidden gems of this country.
It is a hidden gem. It is.
You don't see it. I mean, you can drive up to North Road. I mean, Pratt's is right there, and you don't notice it because you can look right across.
Right across, yep.
I like to call it the inverted mountains.
The inverted mountains, yeah.
I mean, that's where you find your canyon cedars, and it just feels like you're in the mountains when you're in the bottom.
Yeah, you got a microclimate there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, they're cool. They're cool. They really are. It's a pretty country up there.
Yeah.